We are talking Vanderpump Rules episode 2, Was It Worth It? So let's get right into Tom and Katie because they are who this episode is titled after. It was towards the end of the episode, but when Katie and Tom were talking about kind of like the bar opening, it really broke my heart. On the one hand, it was really sad. Katie's literally like, it broke us. And she said, was it worth it? And she said, like, you choose the bar over me. You choose a lot after, like, over me. Like, this bar was the other woman. So I feel like you definitely feel for it there. But at the same time, like, there were so many other red flags other than this bar opening.
Yeah, I know. I think the one thing that I kind of always was amazed by about like Tom and Katie's relationship is I think that to a certain extent, I often think that like people who like are in relationships that are fighting a lot, like they must be communicating a lot because you're constantly fighting, right? Like you're constantly like saying how you're feeling about things and like, you know, identifying the issues in your relationship. But I really think that even though like, yeah, they fought a lot, like they still clearly have like so much like unpacked issues of their relationship like over the years. Like it's not just about this bar. It's not like this bar is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think it's a huge obviously contributing factor into why they probably did ultimately like end their relationship. Like I think maybe if things had been, you know, a little bit different as they progress, but I think maybe also they just kind of like you grow up, you get to a certain point in your life and you don't really necessarily feel like you will still want to be in that relationship that you were in when you were like in your 20s, right? Like
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's like even leading up to their wedding, they were fighting constantly. There was the he's a battered wife comment from Tom Schwartz. Tom Sandoval, yeah, to Tom Schwartz. Like you wonder, like, did they ever actually unpack that, or they kind of just like put a band-aid over it because they got married and it was beautiful and let's just continue onward.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Katie was always like saying like, you know, I need you to prioritize me in this relationship. And even like looking at this like most recent episode, like clearly it's like you didn't prioritize me in this relationship. You wouldn't like take my side when, you know, we were discussing things about this bar between like you and Tom. Like this is always like been a problem in our relationship, and this is just like the physical manifestation of those problems in this like one entity that I'm now standing in. Like I wish I was standing in, but she was standing in, right? Like
yeah,
it just makes it maybe that much more clear like what your issues really were, because it's easy to like, okay, go home at the end of the day and like ignore whatever your issues were.
Yeah, no, that's true as well. And I think like it's, to your point, like it's probably just the straw that broke the camel's back, but they still do just put so much weight into this bar and having ruined the relationship. I think in like the preview, you hear Schwartz saying like, if it wasn't for this bar, we would still be together.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe that's maybe that's true, but they, you know, they had their problems, and honestly good on Katie for finally acknowledging it and making that what I'm sure was a very difficult move to get out, especially because they're so intertwined in each other's lives and their friend groups and in the show. Like that probably weighed into them staying together for so long as well. And when they are friends, I do truly feel like they're best friends. It's just like their ways of communicating are really different. And Schwartz this season, like we were saying on our last episode, he is coming on. Like I feel like he always somehow was able to like stay below the radar, and like even though he does some things, you always just for some reason kind of overlook it a little bit. I mean, not everyone does. Some people I think have been saying these things about Tom for a while, but for the most part, like he's been decently likable. And it kind of has me wondering, because we saw him on Winter House, right? And remember how happy we were to see Tom and Tom on Winter House, because
I know
they brought in this like fresh new take, and he was telling his side of the story, and he was so like crushed about this divorce, and like I know I felt for him.
Yeah.
And now he's saying the same things, but now we have other people's perspective in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
totally changed. Like,
yeah,
he definitely seems to be playing his little violin, like you
said. And even just like the way that those two like versions of the storylines were edited in the TV shows, right? Like when he comes into Winter House, you know, obviously he's just like found this out, like he's doing his confessional, like whatever, like he's telling us about how this has happened and how he's not telling the group. But in his confessional at the beginning of Vanderpump Rules, like literally the first 5 minutes, they're like, yeah, Tom doesn't know like why he's divorced. He wasn't even listening during this like really important conversation between like him and Katie. So like it just sets you up in such a different way to like receive this information and to kind of like perceive him throughout the season. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I was actually wondering, I feel like a big reason that we're also looking at Tom and not really kind of being as moved by his confessionals where he's like, you know, it was like the Notebook where he's like, it wasn't over, it still isn't over, and like, that's me.
Yeah.
You know, had we not just seen him really downplay you know, what's going on in Lala's life and like not being able to distinguish why he shouldn't be hanging out with Randall, you know, he also just shouldn't want to be hanging out with Randall, like after knowing all of these things about him.
Yeah.
And I feel like just seeing him in that light, just like be so self-centered and like not really caring about this huge custody battle. And that it does really kind of impact the way that you feel seeing him be all heartbroken.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad that you brought that up actually, because I had forgotten about that. But yeah, that Ryan Gosling, like the kind of callback that he mentions, I'm like, that felt so disingenuous. Like, never have I ever felt like you were the kind of person that would fight for Katie. And I think that Katie's always wanted you to be the kind of person that would write her a letter every single day and like, you know, declare your love or like whatever. Like I think that like that was the thing that she was hoping would like finally happen. And she always just wanted him to like pick her.
Yeah.
And he never really wanted to do that. And that's kind of always why this relationship is like never felt like it was really like the one. Unfortunately, I think for me, I was always kind of like,
yeah,
I think a lot of people were always kind of like for this group.
No, for sure. I mean, he even said when he's talking to Scheanna, he's like, oh, I'm not even thinking about dating, like going on dates seems like cheating at this, and it's like that's pretty rich coming from someone who has actually cheated when they were together.
This relationship.
It's just too little too late. Like that's really what it is. Like I think he's finally trying to be that person that she wanted him to be, but it's like I don't think she's gonna hear it anymore.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, like I realize that like some people like have like different ways of like showing emotions and having like relationships, and everybody, you know, has like their different like love languages and stuff. But if you like look at just the relationship between like Tom and the like love that they like had for each other, like I get that maybe it's like we don't actually get like a full picture of these people's lives and what it actually looks like behind the scenes. But like if you look at Tom and Tom, you can see that Tom has love for Tom. Like Tom Schwartz is capable of like standing up for people and like showing his love and like making us feel like he has like a really good genuine connection with somebody. And it's just unfortunate that I never really felt like he had that feeling, that level of love and feelings for Katie, right? Like
it's so true. That bromance is one of the strongest relationships in Bravo, as we've said before.
It is. It really is one of the strongest relationships. They're the ones that have always been destined to be together.
I think that they would if they like they sometimes feel more interested in hanging out with themselves than like their partners.
My God, 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. Well, even in this episode with like Tom and Ariana, like in like her kind of confessionals about talking about like how like she needs quality time and like she's not really seeing Tom, like clearly they are kind of like Tom and Tom are the significant others in their lives. They just don't happen to be the significant others that they're actually living with.
It's so true. Living with. The bar wasn't the other woman; it was Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Tom Sandoval is the other woman.
Yeah, it's I just like, I keep talking about it, but I still just find it so crazy that it just feels like such a reckoning season for Tom. I know this is definitely a different way than I looked at him. I don't know why. He always just like, you could always just be like, oh, but that's
cute.
Tom.
Well, and
he's so charming and silly and aloof.
he was, yeah, exactly. He was cute. Like, he comes in, he's adorable, but he was also like third billing against like these other personalities, right? Like, we were always seeing Jax, who was like so horrible.
That's true.
And like always doing awful things. So like anything that like Jax was doing, and like maybe even Sandoval, because like Sandoval had like some pretty crazy seasons there. So like Schwartz was just like kind of the cute like other one, and like whatever, like, you know,
like comic relief.
Comic relief, like, you know, he had like the cute little bits with like Katie and like the Bubba's and everything, and just them being kind of like easy and in the background, and like, okay, there are one constant in this relationship. And so Jackson and Tom could just kind of be a little bit more of the controversial figures in the series.
I mean, that's a really good point. I think we saw it on Southern Charm as well. When you have some cast members who are just so awful, they, I think, let some of the other ones kind of like fly under the radar and seem a lot better in comparison. Like you saw in Southern Charm with, you know, when you're going up Thomas Ravenel, everyone else looks like an angel.
Yeah, literally. Oh my God. Oh, Thomas, Jesus.
So that's it's interesting, and it is crazy that we are seeing all of this play out. Like we had said before, like we are really invested in these people. We want to see how it plays out. I just I don't know, unless Schwartz finds some way to turn it around, I don't think it's going to be a good season for him.
I don't think it's going to be a good season for him. But I do think like I'm quite impressed by how like, kind of as you're saying, like Tom and Katie are being very vulnerable with us right now too, right? Like we are really getting like a really great glimpse into their life, and like to think that this is only episode 2, like so much already feels like it's happened. Like this is a jam-packed season already, like just from the get-go. Like I'm just so excited.
I'm really excited, and I think we touched on this in episode 1 as well. Is this is a new side of Katie too? I think Katie, in a similar fashion, she was always tied to Stassi, and from that first season, like she had a lot of really mean girl behaviors. Like she was just like, she was nasty. And like, even from the beginning, when her and Kristen turned on Stassi, when she broke up with Jax for a hot second. Like, and I think that carried through like over into different seasons. So like, she wasn't like, she was usually not a fan favorite. And I think that's also why Tom was able to, you know, skirt by as long as he did. But I'm really liking this new side of her. I really didn't think I'd be saying that, but yeah, I'm excited to see what happens.
No, I think you're right. I think she's always kind of felt like a bit like a Debbie Downer too, right? Like she was the one that like called Lisa to like rat out Stassi and like all the things that were like Stassi or whatever, that all the things that were happening in Las Vegas. And then she was also just always kind of like, you know, dragging Tom down, wanting him to not go out and party, like, you know, she was just like the other, like, you know, she was just like a bit of a Debbie Downer, right? Like it was just that kind of like force. And so I think she's kind of like been confined to kind of like that space. And so now I'm kind of interested to see her kind of like come out a little bit more and give us a little bit more. Like she's fully capable of it.
No, I'm excited to see. It's definitely delivering still on episode 2. To that end, I also wanted to talk about Tom and Tom. So they're working up to the Daily Mail party, and their partner Greg had a lot of choice words to say about them. So at the party, we see him talking to Lisa, and he was saying that he was really kind of surprised and he didn't realize that they didn't have that much experience. And I don't really know how that gets miscommunicated when you go into business with someone. Like they clearly were always the face and kind of like the social media engine for Lisa, and she knew that. Like she knew that's what their strengths were. She even said it. But it's not surprising to hear, because I remember, I think I was like texting you last year when we were watching last season. They seem so inexperienced, but it's not just inexperienced, it's also kind of lazy. You know, even like from last season when they had to think up like their motto, or the theme of the bar, and they just like kept pushing it off and pushing
even
off.
Just
and then,
the name of the bar.
Yeah, they just couldn't put anything together. And then even from the beginning, when they were like in Vegas with Lisa, when they were starting Tom Tom and they came up late and they were like hungover, they never seemed to really just know how to like put in that hard work, and really just wanted to go to the end where they were like just showing up and shaking hands.
Yeah, well, and they also like they have so many opinions and thoughts and like desires, and they want to be able to like have their input and like do all these like different things, like this like very elaborate like going around and like sourcing like every single piece of like
couch,
like every the couches but even just like the glassware, like finding all the glassware. And they have like the flashback to Tom talking about like the shots, and like we're gonna make custom shot glasses, and I'm talking to this guy that I know, and he's gonna make sure that like these shot glasses are in such and such a way, and then people will take those shot glasses home with them. And it's just like, okay, you're just gonna give them like a shot glass for free? Like
what's the ROI what? On that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like do they then have to like pay for the shot glass? So it's like, okay, this is no longer the $5 shot, this is like a $10 shot. Like there's just kind of like all these like ideas, which is great, and obviously like a really good way to be able to kind of start off. And like it's better, I guess, to have too many ideas and then be able to like edit them back a little bit. But obviously also like having all these ideas means that like, you know, you push back like the actual due date. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with Schwartz and Sandy's, is that it's taken them so long to like get this thing up and running. And they're saying it's like $1,000 a day to be able to just like not even have it open. Like, yeah, of course they feel like they're like bleeding money, because it's just like, it's just too much.
Well, that's just it. And they were always very like, I remember Tom Sandoval, like when they were opening Tom saying that he felt like, you know, Lisa wasn't taking his opinions into consideration, and he felt like they were just there. And it's like, to a certain extent, you kind of are. Like, it is such a massive opportunity. Like sometimes it just feels like they've kind of lost, like, I don't know, that reality of where they came from before. Like the fact that you have an opportunity to open a bar with Lisa Vanderpump when you've never done that before, and you are the face of this bar. Yes, of course they put up their own money in it as well, but like that, it was a huge opportunity that just landed in their lap. And then they were just kind of like, oh, but we're not the ones running the show. It's like, you need to learn, like, this is what normal people like who put in work to get places have to do. Like you have to put in the work, and there's a time when you kind of have to be there, and you have to listen, and you have to learn, and then you can grow and, you know, start your own ventures and be the boss.
Yeah, exactly. Once you've been the one that's like opened up 19 other bars and restaurants, then like of course you're going to be able to do this in your sleep, like clockwork, no problems, like whatever. Then you can be as crazy as you want to too, because you have like a proven track record of being able to open these things. But like I think that there's just a certain idealism, and also maybe it's because these things did come so easily to them, right? Like they were very lucky to be in the right place at the right time to get a reality TV show. This reality TV show was like a massive like breakaway hit, and then they get like offered this opportunity to like co-own a bar with Lisa Vanderpump and have that be a whole part of this like spin-off. Okay, well, maybe not a spin-off, but whatever. But and then also like, and then you like then have like this liquid capital to be able to go and like open your own bar and like do that. And yes, you're paying for it, you're paying out the nose for it, but you're still like in an extremely lucky, like fortunate place to be, that you have like kind of accumulated this wealth, and you've kind of like come along in this journey. You've had so much success, when people who like normally when you like go into like the restaurant business, like you don't see a profit for 2 years, like you more often than not, like if the business fails, like it's just it's so incredibly difficult to be able to do this. And like you might not have that reality check if you've had like a very, you know, lucky, blessed kind of like experience with this thus far.
Yeah, that's it. And I just feel like that was super apparent kind of in this episode. And it's not to say that they don't like that what they bring, like the cachet kind of, and like, you know, people want to go to Tom. They want to see them. They know they're going to be there. You know, they're super popular in the show, and Lisa needs like doesn't have as like, she can still do things on her own, but it's in her benefit definitely to put these like kind of fresher faces in front and capitalize on the popularity that we're seeing with Tom and Tom.
Yeah,
that's why she's a good businesswoman. Like she knew that's what they were coming here for. And it's just kind of funny that this new partner is, I guess, wasn't expecting that. Like
yeah. Yeah, and I always also kind of like wonder to a certain extent like how put on this is for like for the cameras, because I feel like every like scene that Lisa was in this episode as well was like quite perfectly timed to kind of like be like, oh, give me this information and I'll like do with that what I will, kind of like, especially with the like the Raquel and like Peter thing.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think that was like maybe a little bit played up too, but still like, you know, obviously like the last thing that a business partner wants is to be like losing money every single day when you like just need to get it open.
Yeah, no, definitely. Actually, speaking of Lisa in that scene, when she was saying like, oh, this isn't 2012 anymore, you can't shag your employees.
Yeah,
I don't know about you, but the way that it came off to me when she like went on quite a lengthy kind of tangent, or not tangent, but then she started to like explain to the audience why you can't shag your employees. She's like, it's the power dynamics. It kind of was like she was learning that and she was telling us what she's learned. She's like, this is so why.
Well, I mean, she probably learned it the hard way with what was that guy that lived at her house? Oh my god, do you remember that guy in like the early years of
Cedric.
Cedric. So maybe she learned it the hard way with Cedric because they had like a little bit of like a too close for comfort relationship between like an employee and a manager. Obviously it wasn't like, you know, sexual or anything like that, but it was definitely like blurring the lines of like what was probably actually appropriate between like an employer and an employee. And obviously that was also all in like fun and kind of like great that we got to witness it on the early seasons of Beverly Hills. But I definitely don't think that I could see that happening in any Real Housewives setting now.
No, definitely. I totally forgot about that.
Not those dynamics, yeah.
And I mean, it provided an easy out for Raquel to then kind of like let Peter down easy, and then the timing of that had to be bruised.
Yeah, literally so perfect. I honestly wonder if that was like by design though, because like it just happened too perfectly. Like I just don't know.
Yeah, part of me wonders if this whole Peter thing was kind of pushed by producers, because like Raquel seems visibly grossed out.
Yeah, like she does not seem like she has like any interest in this relationship.
And none of these makeouts happen on camera.
Yeah, which is like quite convenient. We have had to witness a couple dates though now. At least one, I guess.
That's true. So speaking of Raquel this season is continuing her journey towards kind of self-discovery, and she was so relatable in this episode, you know, especially when she broke down crying with Peter.
Yeah, how did you feel about that kind of like little cry scene? Like I feel like I've heard a couple different things about it.
Same. So I actually found it super relatable. Like, she just couldn't even keep it in. And she's just lost right now. Like, she went through this huge breakup where, like, I think she did really hide behind James a little bit. She even said she used him as a crutch. And she just doesn't, you know, she even said a couple of times, she's like, I need to figure out what moving on needs to mean. I need to figure out who I am. And everyone else seems to have their stuff together. And like, why don't I? Like, I think we've all kind of felt that at some point. And like, you know, losing it at something that is, you know, you don't expect someone to be crying. Like, I think that's super relatable. And, you know, as much as Peter can be creepy, he was very attentive to her and her feelings. And you could tell that he really cared. And, you know, I think everyone noticed that. What about you?
Yeah, I felt the same way. I felt like when I was watching that, I felt very emotional. I like really was moved by kind of like what she was saying. I felt like she the problems are very relatable. You know, I think we've all kind of like come out of like COVID and that's changed us. I think she's like moving away from like her mid-20s when you're kind of like, oh, whatever, la la la, so fun. And then you're like even though she's only like 27.
I know.
Like you're starting to feel like, oh my God, what's happening with my life? Where am I going? What am I gonna do? So you're kind of like feeling a lot of like things like that. And then you've also kind of had like, you were engaged like a year ago, and now like, so like everything felt like, okay, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, now I'm engaged, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna like get settled down, I'm gonna have children. Like that was probably the life path that she thought that she was like moving on to, and now she's like starting completely fresh. So yeah, like I can understand that you would be a little bit overwhelmed, and it's like obviously compounded with this like beauty pageant experience that she's had. That's like a pretty emotional thing. Like there's nothing weirder than being like, oh wow, okay, I guess I didn't even place in the top, what was it that she placed in the top 15 or something? 15.
Yeah. And you've like aged out of pageants, which apparently is a thing.
I know. I was like, how old are you? You're not that old. How could you have already aged out of pageants? That's insane.
Oh yeah, because 27 is your peak, apparently.
Ancient.
Don't know.
You should be settling down and having babies now.
Yeah. Is it true that Trump decided that? Like that was Trump who said that 27 is a peak? Because
she would know more than I would.
Yeah, that was so strange.
That was very strange.
Yeah. And it was, the reception to it did seem to be a little bit split as well. Some people also felt that it was very relatable, and then other people actually felt that it was super cringe and fake, and that she doesn't
which I was surprised by. I was really surprised by that.
Same. I don't think that she seems fake at all, and you know, that she doesn't have main character energy. Maybe I could give you that, but I'm still enjoying watching her. And like, think about how hard it must be. She's going through a phase in her life that so many people go through, but to do it on camera as well, when like we also know that she's really shy. You know, she had all those struggles with like speaking in public before with James. Some people did mention that she's just so different than she was with James, but I think if anything, this is more her real self, and that was just her just being really insecure and like nervous on the show, where she really did always come off as James's girlfriend, and she had to take a lot of crap for James and by standing up for him, and like the girls weren't very nice to her either.
No, and I think that's just it. Like I think that her like social experience was impacted by her relationship with him, right? Like that tie like completely severed like or stunted a lot of relationships that she would have like normally like developed with these people if she was on the show in the same kind of like way, right? Like yeah, it was just I felt very emotional about it. I definitely felt like I thought it was real. And I was very surprised when I did go online, like I think the next day or something. And I was like, oh, that's how people interpreted that. Like that was like the last thing that was ever on my mind, especially because I have had those moments where like somebody just like says something like, are you actually, you're serious? You're in a depression? And then you're like, oh God, I guess I am. And now I'm being confronted with it. And I didn't realize that now I'm having this bubbling up of emotions. And it just becomes like, is so intense, and it just comes out of nowhere. You had no idea it was coming.
I know, especially when she was with Scheanna too, and Sheena's like, how was the date? And she's like, well, I cried, and she laughed. I was like, that I really can relate to that. Like some place you were not supposed to cry and you ended up just crying. The girls seem to kind of be like poking at this a little bit and almost trying to embarrass her. I'm sure, like, I hope that's not what they're trying to do, but when Raquel said like, oh, I cried, and Scheanna's like, how many glasses did you have, or like how many glasses in were you, and then even when they're all like, oh, do you remember making out with Peter, like you did in front of everyone, like I feel like they were just kind of like pushing her a little bit, and maybe it's just in good fun, because I think again everyone's had those conversations, but for some reason in this way, like on camera, and then also them just having not been part of any of the drama or what had happened, it did feel a little bit like they were like having fun with that situation.
That's interesting. I hadn't noticed that at the time, but I think you're right. Like I think when you're in that kind of like setting too, where you're like talking to two people who are in like, you know, committed long-term relationships, like even though like Ariana's probably been in her relationship like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years longer than Scheanna has, like Scheanna still has like a baby, she's engaged, like she's in a very stable relationship with Brock at this time. So like yeah, you feel kind of like weirded out by them like asking these questions that are like, maybe they're supposed to be fun and they're supposed to be all in like good taste, but they're actually like, oh yeah, it's great being single, I love this is so much fun, let's make more jokes about Raquel.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess it's like when I feel like someone's single and someone's not, and like the people who are in relationships are like, oh, I want to go on your Tinder and I want to like swipe for you or whatever. And it's like, ha ha ha, this is such a fun game. And the other person's like, well, it's my life.
This is my life. Thank you so much. I'm glad it's hilarious for you.
Yeah. So it was probably just that. But I didn't actually pick up on it the first time when I was rewatching to like take some notes down. That's where I was like, oh, I'm not sure how I'm reading this. Also kind of hilarious that Scheanna is just like really playing friend of this season.
She really is. I know. She's made a couple little like appearances here and there, but really we haven't gotten like a lot of her. I was even surprised when we got a confessional look from her this episode, because I was like, oh, I didn't know if you were gonna get those this year.
I so badly want to know what happened there. Like, was it because of Brock? Brock is also just not in it at all.
He's just not. Like, I think I saw like the back of his head, like enter Schwartz and Sandy's, and that was like it. I'm so pleased.
But you know, she's definitely making up for it in her social media, trying to stir the pot.
I know. I was so annoyed.
So speaking of social media, one of the kind of fun and sometimes not so fun things that happens with these shows now, being in the place where we're at in society, is that we also then get to watch like social media reactions, and then even the cast members, I guess, try to like make their case, and we then see all these like secondary things start to play out online. So of course I'm talking about Scheanna and Katie. Did you see all of that?
Yeah, so I did get to see the page, I believe it's a Page 6 podcast that Scheanna was on, and she was talking about how she was gonna like spill a little bit of the tea about like how that situation went down. And then I was also lucky enough to read Katie's then retort with her kind of like screenshot text messages, basically saying that like any conversation that Katie and Scheanna might have had about how Katie was moving on and was happy to see Tom and Raquel potentially become a couple or whatever was after 17 drinks, apparently.
Yeah.
And that it was then followed up with a series of text messages where Katie made it very clear that she was actually not okay with that whole situation and that kind of like progressing.
Yeah, it was so strange. So even just from Scheanna going on this podcast and saying like, oh, Katie had said that Tom and Raquel would be a cute couple, and told me, like, basically gave me the okay to go kind of pursue that. And then I went to Raquel and told her that this had happened. The funny thing is, like, I don't think anyone believed Scheanna in this interview. Like, it just doesn't seem plausible. So I don't think Katie had to go and show the receipts.
Well, I just don't even really understand like the timeline kind of all of this too, right? Because like the divorce happened in what was that, like the winter of 2022? Is that right?
I think that's what she said.
Okay, so it's winter 2022, and then Schwartz goes on Scheanna's podcast, like what was that, like June or something of like 2022. So like it couldn't have been like that much longer before that happened, because the allegation had been that like they'd like made out allegedly at Coachella, which would have been in like April or May 2022. So right, am I thinking of this right? I'm pretty sure that that's the timeline. So like when did this like Las Vegas like thing happen where like they went out for and they were like drinking in Las Vegas, and like Katie like supposedly said, yeah, I would be fine with Schwartz hooking up with Raquel. Obviously that's not actually the word she said, but like the interpretation of it. Like if it happened, the only other time that I can think that it happened is if they were all like in Las Vegas for like the Vanderpump at Paris, like the Paris, like Vanderpump Rules, like whatever cocktail garden thing that they opened in the Paris hotel in Las Vegas.
That makes sense.
But even then that would be like what, like May 2020. So like all of this is kind of like happening like pretty close together. Like it just feels like the timeline is like a little bit fuzzy, and like because we like started off the season with like Katie being pretty clear that she like didn't really want like any relationships to be happening within the group. Like I just don't understand like when she would have like how like, you know, one May day, let's say in 2022, she was like, oh yeah, I would be fine with Tom and Raquel cooking up. I think that would make a cute couple. That would be great.
It's so strange. And then also Scheana being like, and then I went to do that because you asked me to. It's like, you're literally almost in your 40s, all of you, and like you have a kid. And, like I don't think she literally went, like she wants you to go like matchmaker and like set these two people up.
Yeah.
Also, like, why would you do that to Raquel? Need. Yeah, like
I know.
Like, do you think Raquel needs to go to another person like that? Like, no.
He's also 12 years older than Raquel. Like,
that's true.
I just think it's so strange that we're always kind of like normalizing like these like massive age gap relationships. Like if I was friends with somebody who was like 40 years old and I tried to set them up with somebody who was like 12 years younger than them, I would feel weird about that. I would be like, I don't know if you guys are really at the right stage of life where like you both are gonna want like the exact same things. And if you do, then maybe I'm questioning why the 40-year-old wants the same things as the 28-year-old. It's like, what's going on there?
And we haven't even seen that episode come out yet. So it makes me wonder if like Scheana is going to be put in a really bad light and like really looking like she kind of like was the mastermind behind this and she's trying to save face or something.
Yeah, she's like hedging her bets ahead of time. It's very possible. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it's
she's got enough media experience.
And then the other thing that well, this is actually like more social media of the fans coming out about something that happened in the show. One thing that I actually really did like was Lisa sit down with Lala when she was like, you know, if you're really honest with yourself, like, did you really not know any of it? Or like, did you not want to know? And it was so refreshing to hear someone finally come out and say these words, especially after going through everything that we went through with Beverly Hills and just like everyone pretending that this Erica situation is either not happening or they're just going to take her.
Doesn't need to be discussed.
Yeah.
Like
they're just going to like blindly follow her. It was nice that Lisa actually said that. And maybe it's because she has always been more as like, you know, they're on the same level. Lisa was her employer. So maybe she feels more validated to say that. But I was happy that she actually did. But you were saying that you saw some different reactions to that conversation.
Yeah, I feel like on social media, they've been like pretty, well, a lot of the things that I've seen were actually in favor of Lala and like kind of like against Lisa, like people being kind of upset that Lisa is basically like victim blaming Lala, which I thought was kind of like an interesting interpretation of that scene because I didn't really get that at all. I think that, you know, reality TV is meant to be confrontational and you know, like you're supposed to be getting to the story, right? Like, and you know, Lala has kind of like put on an air over the years. I think that's kind of what we discussed like last week as well, is that she's just like, she's always been defending her man, right? Like that's always been kind of like her bit. So like Lisa kind of needed to like know, like, what do you actually know? Do you actually know more than you're letting on, right? Like, did you have a sense of this the entire time? And you know, I just think that I'm really glad that Lisa did that and had that conversation with Lala. You know, obviously it was pretty emotional for Lala and she ended up crying at the end, but at the same time, like, this is what we come here for. like unfortunately, like you open yourself up to reality TV, you open yourself up to hard questions. Like Jen Shah's going to prison or went to prison this past weekend because she put her life on reality TV and like exposed herself like 18-fold of what she had before. And so like the questions I thought were like pretty in line, and I think that Lisa like backed away like when Lala did become more emotional and she didn't keep on like pressing. But yeah, I guess a lot of people kind of felt that it was like too much and that like Lala's the victim in this and that was an uncool thing to do. I don't know how you feel about that or like what you're
I feel pretty similar. I think it's just like it is just really tricky because Lala on her own is a very kind of polarizing character as well. And we've seen her do some really shady things. And to your point, like every season since Randall came in, which I think was her first season, she has literally not let anyone talk about him. So, you know, how could anyone even tell her about these red flags, because she was so unwilling to hear any of them. So I feel like she kind of like created a bit of this picture. So then just to see it go the complete different direction, of her not knowing, like there's some feelings there, like it's a little confusing. But at the same time, like you definitely don't want to blame Lala, because she is also a victim in this, you know, like that is true. Randall, like regardless of how much she knew, let's say she knew something, like I don't think anyone thinks she knew the full extent of what he was doing. But yeah, it's just like something doesn't add up, I guess.
No, I think that's fair. Have you read the LA Times article about?
No, I haven't heard it.
It was super fascinating. Like some of the allegations, like I'm kind of like I guess I can understand why they're not really talking about them on the show, but like beyond like the kind of like money that he was spending and like the lawsuits that he was kind of getting into, like the allegations, and Lala did bring this up, is like basically using like one of his like assistants as like a drug mule. Like literally like getting like his assistant to like go back to like a hotel and like pick up drugs for him and like bring them back to him. Like there are very serious things in there, and there's also a lot of stuff in there about like the way that Randall was like, you know, getting like Bruce Willis to like come into his like work on his movies and stuff, and like working him like too much for this person whose like health was already deteriorating. And like there are things in the, I think it's worth a read, because the LA Times article like goes into detail about like what Lala did know versus like what Lala like maybe didn't know. Like they obviously can't say like what she did or didn't know, but they were able to use like supporting information provided by her to talk about the article, right? To like bring that information into the article.
They insinuated that she knew some things.
I think there's a quote from her talking about how she mentioned in passing a comment, let's say, from Randall about how Bruce was no longer like okay to be working, basically.
Oh my gosh.
And so there's this all this stuff. It's actually really interesting, and it might be worth doing kind of like at least like a little bit of like a deep dive, like just a super like surface level one or something, just to be able to go over some of the details, because it's crazy. There's just it was really interesting.
It's just like whenever, like just the way that she's really going diehard, that she knew nothing, like she had no inclination that he was potentially shady, when it's like she was so young, like there's when they met, and like all of a sudden you're, you know, going on these PJs, and like also like why could no one say his name for so many years, and like literally
I know, because do you remember like the like experience of finding out who it finally was, and you were like, who?
Oh yeah, everyone thought it was like some famous person or something. It's like if you hadn't told us his name, like no one would have known,
no one would know who him
the person was.
And like he's making like C-list movies, like he's not making like, anything that anybody's ever actually heard of.
Let's calm down there. Like Lala definitely was more famous than he was at the time of the show. I mean, maybe there's circles that are going to be like, that's so untrue. But
no, I think he was definitely like he benefited from her. And like the only thing that I can think of that he did that was worth like noting is like The Irishman that he did in like 2020, and it was because he was like finally able to like produce a movie with like Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese and stuff, and he was just like bringing some money into like the project, like
or like
was his big thing.
Remember when they had like that poker scene, and then like the guy from, was it like John Tucker Must Die, or like that some
oh my god, are you serious? Jesse Mellencamp or whatever his name was.
That him? Oh gosh, Jesse? Maybe it was someone else.
Jesse Mellencamp. Does that sound right? No, that sounds like Teddy Mellencamp. Jesse Metcalf.
Yeah, Jesse Metcalf.
Yeah.
Randall. I think it was him. Oh man, I could be totally wrong.
I think you might be right, actually.
But there was some celebrity that they had put in this poker thing, like clearly just to be like, Randall knows celebrities.
Look at him. Yeah, so there's this movie. Is this him? I wonder.
Side note, loved John Tucker Must Die.
Just love John Tucker Must Die. I wish
that's what I show him as.
I mean, that's probably the best thing that he's made. He was in what's that? Oh God, what's that movie with no, the TV show Desperate Housewives. He was like the love interest for Eva Longoria.
Yes.
Such a random tangent.
Yeah. But yeah, like I don't think it took, like everyone knew there was something off with Randall and with their relationship, like from the very beginning. So I feel like it would just be a lot easy. Like I don't think people would question her as much if she was like, well, I could tell something was off. Oh, I also wanted to talk to you about this therapist thing. Where she's talking to Lisa.
Yeah.
And she's like, I felt like something was off. Like I never met his, like I didn't see his house, I didn't see his family.
Yeah.
And what's happening with your ex-wife? And then she said that they went to a couples counselor, like they went to a therapist, and the therapist was like, oh yeah, his ex-wife is like a codependent and he keeps trying to leave her, but she won't. And then that was what Lala was like, oh, okay, well, I spoke to this therapist, so everything's fine now.
Yeah.
I was like, I know, that was so crazy. Explanation.
Who is this person? Like, but I don't understand. Like, where did you find this therapist? Well, they were able to like buy off or whatever.
Yeah, apparently it was like the ex-wife and Randall's couples counselor when they were in therapy. Therapist, can you come forward and tell us what happened?
Yeah. We need some deets.
I found it just the strangest story.
That was such a strange story. Yeah, no, I don't know, like it all is too weird. I think that's the problem with it, right? Like we're never gonna know because it's all just too weird. These are too many weird things. Nobody can like understand like how this happens or like
it's yeah, I don't know. It's a weird plot line, and then that like and then like the fact that she'll go in the same sentence from like talking about something like that to like some nasty thing that she tells.
This is what I had in this trash can over here. Or behind this trash can. In this trash can. In the trash can. In the trash can. Nice and discreet.
Also that they're just being so open about her and James having hooked up and cheated on their significant others. Like that's just like funny now. Like haha.
I know, it's because we were drinking so much. We just like didn't even know what was going on.
It doesn't count, right?
Yeah, it doesn't count. We can talk about it openly now.
Yeah,
super
that's strange.
That's a strange plot device.
And then last shout out is just James is giving too much, that he's over Raquel. It's so performative.
Yeah.
The scene where he like ate lettuce out of her mouth is one that has come up multiple times.
That was just one thing I've never needed to see in my life. And like she was eating it. She wasn't like, it wasn't just like hanging out. She was just like, oh, there's a piece of lettuce hanging out my mouth. She was like actively eating that piece of lettuce. You didn't need to do that. That was gross.
It was gross.
Oh, I also thought it was funny. Sorry, this is now.
Now it's just the random thoughts.
Now it's just the random thoughts that I felt like I had to mention. But the at that beginning of that scene when like he's just like staring at her and he's like, you have the prettiest hair of anybody I've ever seen. And like, no offense to her hair, but she's just got like brown straight hair. Like it's the like prettiest hair you've ever seen. Like that's the one. Like, so what?
Everything coming out of his mouth is just like clearly to somehow jab Raquel. And it's giving, I think I saw somewhere online being like, it's giving Kristen Dowdy when they were dating and she was trying to pretend that she was over Tom.
Yeah.
Like, James is doing the equivalent of Kristen showing up to Tom's house in that low-cut green dress to get the mail.
Oh my god, amazing.
Iconic.
It's so iconic. It's so true. It's just so weird because it's just, I don't get why he thinks that he needs to do this, and I just don't really get the sense that he's actually like that in love. I don't know.
And it's not fair to Raquel, and it's not fair to his new girlfriend. Like, that's like, why do people keep coming into the show as like timid James's girlfriends? Like,
just to be eaten up alive.
Yeah, I fear for her.
I hope she doesn't meet the same fate. I hope that she like is a little bit smarter than Raquel was and she gets it faster.
Yeah, rocks the boat, as she said. Yeah, another good episode. I'm excited for next week. What did you guys think of the episode? Let us know all your thoughts. Yeah. And then before we go, be sure to like and subscribe first, please. If you want more Bravo content, we're going to be going through Vanderpump Rules. We're going to be going through Summer House, and we want to get to BravoCon. So if you can help us get there with 1,000 subscribers, we will see you there. Yeah. And then finally, Iris, you just went to the Roni musical, right?
I did, yeah. So I want to give a little bit of background in case nobody's ever heard of it.
I actually don't know what it is.
Okay. So like during the pandemic, the Panini, there was this Instagram account. The Panini?
Is that what people are calling the pandemic?
Yeah, that's what people called the pandemic. Like way back at like early TikTok, people were calling it like the panini, the panera, like the whatever.
Oh my god, there was so much bread making. I didn't
there
realize
was so much bread making. Analogy. Yeah. Well, I wonder if that's the reason why we said that. But yeah, so during that kind of like time, there was I think it was I want to say 13. The last season of Roni basically was like airing, right?
The dumpster fire season.
The dumpster fire season. And so this account started up and it was called Roni Parody. And it's like basically like they compose songs and like then they have like somebody like perform the songs as if they were like Dorinda or like Ramona or Leia or whatever. And it's hilarious. They're so good. It's very funny. And they're so talented too. So basically what they've done is they like took all of their kind of like, you know, like songs and different things that they kind of created and they like made it into like a little bit of a musical. And so I actually went to go see it this weekend, and it was essentially the plot line of this like musical is that it's the season 10 reunion where Bethany and Carol are fighting. And so it's just like so amazing. It's not even like a play or anything. Like it's just kind of like it's almost like a cabaret. It's not. But they're like, you know, they're just like standing up there, and it's just like I think there were 6 women, and then there was like a guy playing like Andy and like playing like a manager at one point. And so they're just like singing like as if they were Bethany or Carol or like Ramona or whatever, and it's just like it's absolutely hilarious and it's so good. You should definitely go look at the Instagram, find out all about it. And I think that this was like the second time that they've done the Roni musical. I don't know if they're gonna like try to keep on doing it. Like I would love if they could get to BravoCon. I think obviously that could be like a thing that would happen. That would be incredible because like they're literally so talented. Like
that's so crazy. So you just happened to go to New York when they were doing this. Like it's not a thing that they put on all the time.
No. It was like one night only. They did 2 performances. So they did one back in November. And I didn't get to go to that one, but then I saw that this one was happening, and I was like, "Oh, that'd be like fun." So they did 2 performances, and
that's hilarious. And you went.
It was so good. Yeah,
with your boyfriend, right?
Yeah.
Did he like it, knowing like none of this?
Oh my god, no, he loved it. He got like the majority of the jokes as well. Like because it's literally like chock full with like all of the Bravo references, right?
Oh my god.
And like even like the ringtone on Andy's like cell phone was like Melissa Gorga's On Display. So there was like just like so many like little like inside references to Bravo stuff. It was so good.
That's amazing. I need to see it.
10 out of 10 would recommend. But yeah, so that was my weekend. That was pretty bad.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. I saw Ant-Man.
Nice.
It's not the same.
Amazing. Hey, I mean, I heard that they made $104 at the box office. $104 million at the box office.
$104. They did super great.
millions at the box office this weekend. So that's pretty good. I feel like that's respectable.
Will we get a Marvel Bravo crossover?
We should do a Marvel Bravo crossover. That'd be so fun. There's got to be some crossover in the genres. There's room for anything in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.